Through the Vortex. Y. Seng-young. Copyright at 2020 Y. Seng-young. All rights reserved. The characters and events portrayed in this book are fictitious. Any similarity to real persons, living or dead, is coincidental and not intended by the author. No part of this book may be reproduced, or stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without express written permission of the publisher. Chapter 17. Captured. And Waterston, Captain Evans, where have they gone to? How come we cannot see them on the monitors? Captain Evans, all our sensors do not register any of their vital signs. I do not know what has happened to them. And what about Ken? Please find out where he is. Do something quick. Please. Ron, what is wrong with you, Anne? Calm down, as they could be out there somewhere. Give them a few minutes and they may register on our sensors, and even if they do not register, they could have been transported somewhere else, out of range of our sensors, and be able and well. Captain Evans, Ron is correct. Let us all stay calm and review our options calmly. Ron Carter, since you are the acting task force leader, I am duly informing you that I am activating my proximity alarm to send and receive similar signals from my son Jake's equivalent sensor. Alistair Mackenzie, what good will that do, Ron? The signal will not go anywhere outside of the dome shield. Ron, of all the crazy things that have happened in the last 1 week, how can you be sure my proximity sensor will not function? I just want to try any chance that Jake can receive my signal and I receive his. Okay. Captain Evans, Alistair, can you come over to the main control room? There is something I need to check with you. Alistair, who has been keeping pretty much to himself in the aft control room, reading some obscure manuals and checking various screen displays. Okay, I will be right over. Back at the aft control room, Ron and Anne busied themselves with the sensors in the auxiliary control room to try to locate the missing members of Team A. Alistair reached the main control room and sat down at the spare control chair and looked at Captain Evans in anticipation. Now what to do now? Colonel Evans is gone, so is Professor Anatoly. Captain Evans, we put Plan B into action then, as if the whole team was in place. Alistair, Captain Evans, we need Professor Anatoly as he is part of each plan during our briefings. And even Sergeant Manning is gone. So, what is Plan B? Captain Evans, yes, Plan B cannot work without two persons activating the arming device for the nuclear devices, so you must be the other person. Alistair, I am just the tech to prepare the devices, I cannot arm and deploy the weapon. I am not trained to do that. Captain Evans, no, you have been trained to deploy the weapon, and that's what you will do should the situation escalate any further. Right now, we stay on alert and monitor all channels of communications. Alistair went back to aft control room and was terribly upset by the entire experience. Anne and Ron looked at him, and Anne could see that Ron was about to ask him what went on in the forward control room, but Anne gave him a stare and raised her finger to her lips to signal that she will do the questioning. And, so Alistair, what did you and Captain Evans talk about? You do not seem happy with the talk? Ron, let me guess, some military macho stuff about being vigilant and prepared to take action. Alistair, no, I cannot tell what I was told to do, but I have a job to do now. With that he went back to reading the manual that he had been huddled in one corner with since they woke up after their voyage. Ron caught a view of the manual and grabbed it and showed it to Anne. Look at this, B2MOP manual. Anne, what? What is B2MOP? Ron, according to this manual, the acronym for B2 Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Wait, doesn't the B2 carry our nukes for the Air Force? Alistair was hesitant for a few seconds and then thought, what the heck? Might as well tell them, since all of them may not even survive to get home. The Habitat carries a modified B-2 bomber's massive ordnance penetrator with 16 numbers of 30,000 megaton bunker-busting nuclear bombs packing enough wallop to crack open a small asteroid. We had developed this to protect us from asteroids on collision paths with the Earth. We also have 12 more similar missiles in the add-on pod at the back of the Habitat. A timed firing sequence using the firing computer installed in the main control room console. The sequenced explosions generate enough explosive power to kill a small planet. And Alistair, you are just a nuclear technician. Ron, there is this NSA security pass of yours on the inside cover of the MOP manual. Who the hell are you? Alistair, I am actually an undercover operative from the NSA assigned to Trellis Air Force Base and mobilized to join all of you at Chernobyl. And what are you supposed to do with those nuclear bombs we are carrying in the belly and at the back of the habitat? Ron, let me guess, blow everything that crosses our path to Kingdom Come, including my son Jake. Alistair, no, this is not what my mission is about. We are here to reason with the creators of these light clouds. And should reason fail, we blow them up to ensure they do not come over to Earth ever again. Alistair, no, it may not happen that way, well, at least not if we can help it. It was decided that we must come prepared. Colonel Owens followed Ken's pointing finger and caught sight of the window at the end of the room. His eyes narrowed and focused on the humanoid faces through the window view. Who are they staring at us? Zekan called Zuriel and authorized the transfer of the isolation cage with Team A to interrogation room just at the side of the loading bay control room. Zuriel looked at Zachary, who had also received similar clearances from Zevon, and deactivated the cage. Colonel Owens led the way, stepping immediately away from the vicinity where the cage has vanished. He drew from a hidden hip pocket a non-metallic Kevlar composite gun in hand. Dr. Ken Harding and Professor Anatoly also stepped out after the Colonel, and with Sergeant Manning behind them with his carbon fiber reinforced composite attack knives in both hands drawn. The Colonel and Sergeant Manning jumped the two sentries guarding the doorway of the interrogation room, pushed them down and rushed out. Colonel Owens spotted the control desk inside the adjoining room. He grabbed one of the guards and knocked on the door and pushed his face in front of the door cam. When the door opened, Colonel Owen and Sergeant Manning entered the control room and saw the image of the habitat on one of the video screens. Colonel Owens, Sergeant, disable the force field around the habitat now. Sergeant Manning stepped up to the control desk and pointed his weapon at the two operators. Which control is for the force field? The two operators could not understand what he was shouting about. Sergeant Manning looked at the control desk and spotted a red shut-down push button. He reached forward and opened the cover box enclosing what must be the stop button. He slammed his fist on the button and closed the cover. A security detachment deployed from the main monitoring station burst into the control room at that moment. Zachary signaled two guards and they fired their stun weapons at Sergeant Manning and Colonel Owen. Colonel Owens felt numb all over and collapsed to the ground, and as he watched in total helplessness, two of these humanoids came forward and took their weapons. He could see that Sergeant Manning was also lying paralyzed on the ground just like him. Colonel Owens woke up and found himself with his wrists locked in electronic cuffs and legs secured to the chair he was sitting in, when he struggled against the bindings only to find he could not break them nor move the chair which was secured to the ground. He looked around and saw that Sergeant Manning was similarly bound. He kind of half expected that. What surprised him was seeing Ken and Professor Anatoly sitting around a table at the other end of the room. Opposite them were two humanoid beings. Ken spoke into a watch-like device strapped to his wrist. One of the humanoids spoke into his communications unit, and two big-looking humanoids came into the room and went over to Colonel Owens' chair and stood over him. Ken raised his voice and spoke to Colonel Owens. "Colonel, do you give your word as an officer and a gentleman that you will not resort to violence? They meant us no harm and just want to talk to us." Colonel Owens, how do we talk to these beings? English, or do they speak alien speak? One of the two burly humanoids pushed an earphone device into Colonel Owens' ear and then did the same with Sergeant Manning. The humanoid sitting in the middle of the table stood up and spoke. "Colonel Owens, raise your right hand if you can understand clearly what I am saying, and please say yes so that we can also check the translator function of your device." "Colonel Owens, you speak English." "I am Zuriel. You are hearing us speak in our native language through the ATS, all-speech translator, we put into all your ears. We wear the same to understand your speech in your language you call English. Colonel, we give you our word not to do anything violent, but it would be easier to talk with our hands and legs free." "Zachary, I am Zachary, Chief Security Officer of High Temple of Sol on Heliu, I want you to understand that we are ready to deal with anything you may even be thinking of. Only your electronic leg restraints will be freed. Ken Harding, who had been studying the readings on his special instruments, looked up at Zuriel. So we have been brought here to where you call Heliu, and by what technology that you have that brought the habitat across almost the universe so many light years from Earth? Zachary, you come to our planet with military persons armed with weapons that they seem prepared to use, and you dare to question us. Colonel, did we invite you to our planet Earth? Yes, that is where your light cloud things have been busy at. We have every right to ask you whatever we need to know. Professor Anatoly, Zuriel, I presume you are a scientist and in charge of this facility. Do you know what is happening on our planet because of those entities you sent over? Zuriel, I oversee the Dimensional Gate program which sent those mass energy transfer entities out to select planets to gather certain materials we need. You are Ken and you are Anatoly. Look, we are all fellow scientists. So, let us put aside what has happened, who did what to whom, and concentrate on the events here and why we are where we are. As fellow scientists, everyone sat down around the conference table. Humans and Helicians all looked at each other and an awkward silence descended in the room. Ken, let me ask the first question. Why do those entities collect all that mass from Earth for? Zuriel, let me show you our star. A hologram image of our star Helios, I believe you call it Helix, NGC 7293-inch. A hologram appeared over the conference table with vectored arrows linking the star Helios back to the Sun in Earth's solar system. Ken, how did you know that? Wait, the Star Navigation System database in the Habitat. Colonel Owen, you hacked into the Habitat SPS system. Professor Anatoly, but Helios is already a nebula, about to become a white dwarf. Zuriel, maybe in your space-time continuum. In our time, it is a different reality. Yes, it is about to become a nebula as what you call it and have not yet happened, and we are going to prevent it from happening. Zachary cut in, Zuriel, do not give them any information. My men will now escort you to the security lockout now. Ken, you mean we have traveled to Helix star system but in a different space-time continuum from Earth when we arrived here? Zuriel, it is a phenomenon associated with traveling through the dimension gate we create space-time non-continuity. I believe your scientists call it a wormhole. In our space-time continuum, our star Helix or Helios is still in its main phase but has been begun expanding as it consumes its AX-1 star fuel. So, over the past 50 years, we have developed these automatic entities we send out to scour the galaxies for suitable elemental materials. We have exhausted the nearest planets, so we have been sending them to your part of the galaxy and a few others. We have no harmful intentions on your planet or your life forms. Professor Anatoly, so can I guess, they gather mass to feed your star? Ken, but Zuriel, how will that work? Zuriel, do you understand what mass seeding of a star is? I cannot believe your technology has reached that level. From what we know, your race has not even developed space travel beyond unmanned probes and short trips to your satellite moon and some nearer planets in your own star system. Zachary, all of you, let's go, no more questions and we cannot let you stay free. We are now escorting you to the interrogation room. If you are lucky, you will have a chance to have an audience with our High Priest Seven. Zuriel, and you will meet our chief scientist Zekon. I will brief him about our conversation. Zachary's security personnel reinstated the electronic leg restraints on Colonel and Sergeant and then escorted the team out of the conference room. Dr. Ken Harding and Professor Anatoly were shown front seats in the cabin of a sleek transport vehicle that, when it took their weight, simply adjusted automatically to effortlessly float above the ground. Colonel Owens and Sergeant Manning were escorted out after an interval and seated in the rear compartment of the transport vehicle. As it set off from the Dimensional Gate building, there was something in the adjoining building that caught the eyes of Ken Harding, who pointed it out to Professor Anatoly. Ken, Prof, look at that adjoining bay, see what's in there. In the adjoining bay, they could see a sphere-like object about 50 feet across, with back doors open towards the area where their vehicle had been. They could see modules of bluish glowing mass being loaded into the vehicle from a conveyor belt of sorts. Just then from within the darkened interior of the bay, another similar vehicle emerged with slow but deliberate motion, and with a flash of emitted energy at the base of the circular vehicle, it began to levitate above the ground and shot its way into the sky. Professor Anatoly said to Ken, "This is the most unbelievable experience to hear that we have gone to another star system in a different space-time continuum from Earth." Ken, "Yes, Prof, and to think that we did not know of the existence of life on other worlds only a week ago. Now we are talking to a scientist belonging to a race with technology so advanced and superior to Earth's." As their vehicle left the docking bay, it entered a transparent conduit elevated above the ground which connected to an entire similar conduit system that extended into the distance. Overhead the Helix sun was shining ever so brightly in the sky above. The four of them gawked in silence at the futuristic cityscape rolling past until Professor Anatoly spoke up, "Ken, we need to focus on their need for seeding their star with the mass harvested from Earth. How do we convince them to stop? Ken, if their star Helix is burning up its hydrogen and started consuming helium, then its mantle is most likely to expand and expel its material into the star system, sweeping all in its way. This planet Helio and all within the radius of expansion of the star mantle will be obliterated. Colonel, as a military man, it is just inconceivable that these aliens have only this one plan to save their star. There must be an alternative to gathering mass from Earth for this mass seeding program. Given the need for survival, they will not stop this program unless they have another means to save their star." Ken burst out in excitement, "Colonel, you are right, we need to help them figure out another way to save their star. If we assume their star Helix is of similar class as our Sun, then the main process of fusion within their star's core is that of proton-proton reaction. So, the hydrogen process is dying out, and therefore the second, third, and fourth phase of the fusion process within the core of the star will begin to slow and stop. Professor Anatoly, not if they can generate enough deuterium to jump-start the fusion process from the first and maybe the second stages. Ken, we do not know so many things about what goes on in the core of a star, and of course we know nothing of their star. All our understanding of a star is based on what theoretical research our predecessors have done our Sun. Our theories have not been subjected to experimental research in any way on an actual star. Professor Anatoly, this Zuriel may be willing to talk to us. If we can work together to understand their star fusion process and figure out an alternative solution. Colonel Owen, so Zuriel and these Helicians will then agree to stop those light clouds based on our theories unproven at best? You scientists are kind of naive to think that way. Sensing the hopelessness of their situation, silence descended on the group. As they looked at their surroundings, looming in the front view of their vehicle was the towering building complex, and it is clear that their vehicle was headed towards that complex. Sergeant Manning bent forward and stared at the console of the vehicle and looked at the displayed speed that they were traveling at. "Colonel, I have set my stopwatch and have been monitoring the speed of this vehicle. I can estimate how far we are from the habitat location." Colonel Owens, we do not know what units of velocity that is displayed, but in relative terms, if we can get a similar vehicle to this one, we can get back to the habitat. I memorize landmarks along the route we took. I think we can find our way back there. Professor Anatoly, whatever units of velocity they use, that number show the speed we must be traveling at, and yet we do not feel a thing. Ken, wish we knew what technology the Helicians are using? Do you think it is electromagnetic drive technology? Colonel Owens sat glumly in his seat, eyeing the two security guards on either side of him and Master Sergeant Manning, with the electronic restraint on his wrists and ankles on both. There was nothing he could do. Sergeant Manning whispered to Colonel Owens, "Sir, these two guards are not wearing the translator ear thingy, so we can talk. Wait till they remove these cuffs. I will knock out these two guys in 5 seconds." The sights along the journey their vehicle was taking could easily be seen through the transparent conduit way their vehicle was passing through. Ken and Anatoly stared at the unbelievable sights, trying to guess what technology they were looking at. Colonel Owen and Sergeant Manning kept a lookout for the landmarks, trying to figure out the route back to the habitat. The vehicle finally slowed down and pulled into a landing bay in the bowels of that central building complex and eased to a stop. Then the cabin doors opened automatically. Zuriel and Zachary were waiting for them inside the landing bay. Zachary stepped forward and was followed by 4 security personnel who then freed the Colonel and Sergeant Manning from the leg restraints and nudged them along ahead of Professor Anatoly, Ken, and Zuriel and Zachary.